Right here. All right, Mr. Chair, through you, I do believe we just lost Councillor Oosterhoff and he's coming back in. We're having some technical difficulties this morning. Mr. Chair, would you like to wait a minute or two to see if we get Paul in on the call, or would you like to get started now that we're 2 minutes in?
Sorry, I've had a problem here. Do you want to start again, Madam Chair?
No problem. So I'm just, we do have quorum currently. The only member missing at this time who would be able to show up would be Paul Banfield. Would you like to wait another minute to see if we get him on the call, or go ahead and get started as we have quorum at the moment?
Yeah, if I can just go back to your list then. Jolinka Burney has said she will not be here, and Jennifer has also said she will not be here.
Correct.
So we have 6. Why don't you go through the formal parts of things and see where we are then?
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we do currently have quorum at this time. Missing from our committee is Paul Banfield, Jolinka Burney, Jennifer Demeter, Donald Mitchell, Ted Smith. Joining us from staff are Jennifer Campbell, Director of Heritage Services, Andrea Gummo, Manager of Heritage Planning, Philip Perrow, Intermediate Planner, Aidan McFarlane, Intern with Heritage Services, Ian Sullivan is our meeting host, and I'm Elizabeth Fawcett. I'm Committee Clerk for Heritage Kingston. We currently have no members of the public, and we do have at least one property owner or applicant on the call at this time. So, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you to get us started.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would certainly welcome Aidan. Aidan is an intern with the Heritage Department, and welcome in, Aidan. I know you're going to have some things to say during the meeting. The meeting then called to order at 9:34. Approval of the agenda as printed. Are there any additions, changes to that agenda that you wish to make? Don Taylor?
Wonder if we could have under the business discussion of the city council.
I am having great trouble hearing you. I'm not quite sure where the fault may be.
Well, I think I have on YouTube me. I'm coming closer. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Then I'd like to suggest that under other business, we have a discussion of the council meeting or the council decision on 73 Owington.
Okay. So that's under other business 11, a report from the councillors on the discussion on 73 Alwington. Other additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, just a note that we did send out an addendum with additional correspondence as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and I forgot to put that down. So under correspondence, there should be note of an addendum for 12 Drummond, 16 Drummond. Thank you. And you should have received that last night. Otherwise, I look for a mover to support the revised agenda. Councillor Doherty, seconded by Don Taylor. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour, you can raise your hands, or Janine, you're calling in. Thank you. One, and those opposed, so that is all in favour. And I have just lost my screen again. I'm not quite sure what's happening here. I'll be with you in just a moment, I think. Let's go back and try. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
good. Okay, thank you. I'm not, that's twice that's happened, so I'm not quite sure what's happening here. Minutes, confirmation of the minutes of July 20th. I have not heard any concerns about these. Does anybody have any concerns as they are printed and seeing? Oh, Don Taylor?
No concerns, but I just wanted to comment that the minutes, particularly with the 730 and discussion, were excellent. And I hope everybody reads them carefully. It was a difficult application, and I think the minutes capture that very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are you having trouble hearing Don Taylor as well?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is.
Okay.
It is coming in a little bit garbled, Mr. Taylor. Yep. I'm not sure if it might be an internet connectivity concern. I might suggest if you'd like to exit and come back into the meeting and see if that adjusts it. We can take a brief pause here to make sure that we have everyone in the meeting. I will also note that Councillor Oosterhoff seems to have dropped off the call, and yes. So we do require Councillor Oosterhoff in order to continue at this time. So Mr. Taylor, if you wanted to exit the meeting and come back in to see if that would reset your settings.
And we'll wait. We'll wait for you.
And we have to wait. Yeah.
Okay, Don, if you can unmute yourself, and then we'll see.
Okay, how does that sound?
Oh, no, we're about the same. So we're going to have to put up with it, except that at this point we are without, oh, here's Councillor Oosterhoff, I believe. Yes, there we go. So we're back to a quorum. And I'm looking for a mover to for the confirmation of the minutes as printed. And I see Jane McFarlane looking for a seconder. And I see Councillor Oosterhoff, so moved by Jane McFarlane, seconded by Councillor Oosterhoff. Any further discussion? And seeing none, those in favour, if you can raise your hand or call in. And those opposed, and those minutes then are okay. Pecuniary interest, do we have any known at this time? And if not, my usual comment that if any suddenly appears, please let us know. Delegations, presentations, briefings, business from cultural heritage at all, which brings us down to the stat business of 102 Centre Street. And Philip, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, the application for 102 Centre Street, locally known as the Bearberry College, is to restore the existing front porch back to its previous form based on a historical photograph, which is estimated to have been taken between 1880 and 1900. Next slide, please. So the subject property, 102 Centre Street, is located mid-block between Union and Edge Hill Street. Is approximately 105 meters south of Union Street, and it's approximately 15 meters south of the Beth Israel congregation. Next slide, please. The building at 102 Centre Street is a two-story limestone cottage with an associated full-length veranda and has distinctive architectural features that was built between 1857 and 1858. Next slide, please. The designated property is the following most relevant attributes related to this application, which are highlighted on the slide. This is a good example of a Gothic revival / picturesque design. The veranda is a defining cottage feature, although ideally in its original style. The building has a direct association with Smith Bartlett, Alexander Campbell, and possibly William Coverdale. It forms an important component of the streetscape and is an area landmark. And finally, the picturesque setting of the cottage/villa style relative to its landscaping. Next slide, please. So the applicant's plans are based on the above photograph, which is estimated to have been taken from 1880 to 1900. The existing porch, while generally sympathetic to the building, is heritage neutral due to its preservation of the form/location of the porch, but is, quote, too heavy in its appearance compared to the principal dwelling due to its thick columns, lack of ornamentation, and closed off porch roof peak. The proposed historic porch ties into the Gothic Revival design and restores a significant amount of heritage value to the property. The restored porch will be based on pictorial evidence, will maintain the existing porch footprint, is a return to the original designer/builder's design principles, will replace a heritage neutral, non-character defining porch, will add appropriate ornamental features, and includes a period appropriate bell cast steel roof, which complements the remaining Gothic Revival elements on the main building. Generally speaking, staff applaud the applicant for taking on such a project, as it will greatly enhance the heritage value of the property. And this is the kind of application we really love to see put before staff and committee for consideration. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight one of the following conditions here, in that the applicant subtly date the woodwork away from public view with the year of installation for future maintenance and legibility purposes. And with that, thank you very much, everyone. I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Philip. Questions from the committee? Comments from the committee? I noticed, by the way, Paul Bamfield has joined us. Welcome, Paul. Councillor Oosthoff.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want a comment positively. Get my words. As we just heard from the presentation, it looks like a fantastic project, and just going to be very, just a real credit to our city and to those doing the work. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Yeah, I just add, Philip, I always date work that I do by hammering a loonie into the building with the date sticking out. And I think the Mint is wondering where 5 of their loonies have gone to when they do their accounting each year. But it's a useful thing and that's a permanent one as well for dating. Further comments then, and seeing none. Oh, sorry, Don Taylor.
Well, again, this is a wonderful project. I just have some curiosity as to whether staff and the applicant are confident that the visual features, the curved roof and the curved wooden elements can be easily done nowadays, because modern steel roofing panels don't have the flexibility to do a Belfast style roof. But I'm sure it can be done, but I just want to make sure if the applicants understand that it may be a challenge.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Clerk, were you able to record that?
Mr. Chair, it is very difficult to hear Mr. Taylor at this time. I believe I would say he might have been referring to the roof, but unfortunately, I'm having a hard time hearing him as well. The other option we have, Mr. Taylor, is that if you wanted to call in to the meeting on your phone, you could still participate with your video on, but your audio would be through your phone. We might be able to hear you better that way.
I wonder if I turn the video off.
We can try that as well.
Yeah, let me try that. Okay, do I sound any better now?
I could hear a little bit better, Mr. Chair, but it is certainly some interference there.
Well, I'm not sure what to do. I could try going to another computer closer to our router. So maybe I'll try that. It'll take a couple of minutes, but I don't think we need me for a couple of minutes. So let me try that.
Otherwise, I'm going to suggest that, Madam Clerk, you asked Mr. Taylor to email his comment in. I think you're right. It was a complimentary comment. For the moment, then it leaves us with a quorum, and I think we can go ahead if there are no further questions or comments and look for a mover and a seconder on this motion. As printed, 4 clauses and 5 conditions. Do I have a mover? I see Paul Banfield. I see Councillor Doherty. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, then I ask you to vote those in favour of the approval and those opposed. And that is carried, and that will be 6 with 1 not voting. Okay, thank you. That takes us down to 113 Johnson Street. And it's always Philip this morning until you bring Aidan in.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. I'll be doing the next one as well. So the application for 113 Johnson Street is to restore the northwest and northeast limestone facade while also recladding the rear addition in a limestone similar to that existing at Anna Lane, which is at 121 Queen Street. Next slide, please. 113 Johnson Street is located between Bagot and Wellington Street, abuts the Greek Orthodox Church to the west, and is across the street from the Kingston Frontenac Public Library. This property is an example of those individually designated properties located just outside of the old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. 113 Johnson Street has a unique built form. The property consists of a pair of 2-story limestone buildings connected by a 1-story wood addition with another 1-story wood-clad addition in the rear of the property. And this property has evolved through the 1850s to the 1940s. Next slide, please. The designated property has the following entry. This small, low-set stone dwelling, built about 1841, is typical of the sturdy and unadorned buildings which have been enlarged and improved over the years from 1854 through 1940. Next slide, please. So there are 2 major parts of this application. The first is the repair of the northwest and northeast masonry work, which is shown in this slide here. And number 2 is the recladding of the rear addition in limestone, which we'll be addressing in the next slide. So the repair of the limestone conforms to the city's masonry policy as the cementedus, apologize for that. Basically, the cement used in the mortar will be removed and replaced with heritage mortar, and the limited and careful removal of masonry units as necessary will be replaced with Riverview contractor limestone, which is a local quarry, to match the existing masonry profile. The restoration will prevent water penetration and assure the chimney structural integrity, which is currently in question. As the northwestern facade is one of the most visible walls, this masonry restoration will have a positive impact on the heritage appreciation of the property. Next slide, please. So the recladding of the rear addition is proposed to change the damaged wood exterior to Riverview contractor limestone veneer, similar to that at the Anna Lane mentioned earlier. When reviewing the standards and guidelines, this project addresses
kind of what I'm looking for, and that's the.
So in this slide over here, the one on the left here shows the property in question in the rear wood-clad addition, and the with the green arrow, it shows the damage that's on that there, showing evidence of water infiltration. And to the right shows 2 pictures of Anna Lane, and the bottom picture shows the coursing that would be a close-up of the coursing that would be proposed for this area. So in this case, when reviewing the standard guidelines, the project addresses water infiltration issues with a more permanent solution, has compatible limestone materials, and importantly, will maintain the existing rear addition exterior form with its inset sides to clearly continue to indicate that the rear addition was a later expansion of this building. However, using an identical material from the same or a similar source on this rear addition can blur the distinction between the original and newly proposed limestone. This concern, however, is mitigated through the proposed limestone veneer, characterized by semi-rough limestone units in similar sizes with the more uniform coursing than the limestone courses of the rear building. As you can see to the two pictures on the right, this would be the coursing that is proposed for that rear addition, and that would be replacing the wood cladding on that rear addition shown to the left. Importantly, the applicant is going to have to note the year of installation on one of the limestone veneer units, and this is a condition of approval, which should further increase the legibility of the new versus the old limestone on the property. Next slide, please. So beyond those building considerations, the property location in its relationship to the surrounding properties further mitigates potential heritage impacts of this cladding in the rear. The rear addition is challenging to see from the public realm and does not draw significant attention for several reasons. The addition is set back approximately 15 meters from Johnson Street on private property. It is nearly invisible when moving along Johnson Street towards Wellington Street, which is the most common way to experience this property, or when viewing the rear of the property from the central post office, as both locations have ivy enveloped fences that hides the rear addition from public view. Additionally, this portion of Johnson Street is dominated by both abutting churches and the central branch of the Kingston Frontenac Library, all of which draws significant attention. Overall, the veneer change from wood to limestone on the rear addition should have limited legibility impacts while also addressing water infiltration and longevity concerns for the property. Next slide, please. Here's the first half of this recommendation here. Next slide, please. Importantly, the owner is required to include the year of installation on one of the masonry units, and all masonry work is required to follow the city's masonry policy. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have questions, I'd be more than willing to help answer.
Good, thank you very much. Committee members, questions, comments, thoughts? Welcome back, Don. And seeing and hearing nothing there, I would look for a mover for the 3 clauses and the 6 conditions for this 113 Johnson Street. Mover and a seconder, if you have them, please. Paul Banfield, moving, and a seconder. Councillor Oosterhoff, thank you. Further discussion? Don Taylor?
Well, I hope you can hear me better.
Oh, that's much better. Excellent. Well done. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm away from my desk and I don't have a mouse and other stuff, but I'll do what I can. So I just have a comment. I mean, certainly there's no significant concerns, but I noticed that all of the committee members' comments really say that it would really be better simply to repair the wood cladding and repaint it. That would deal with the problem that the planner mentioned, that we don't want this new work competing with the heritage structure. And also, I think, you know, this committee is often accused of forcing applicants to do expensive things. We're trying to save you money. Just repair and repaint, and I think the outcome would be fine. So anyway, that's a comment. I certainly have no objection to the application.
Oh, thank you very much. No, it is certainly a reversal of what usually happens. Other thoughts, comments on this? And seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favour of the motion on 113 Johnson, and it is unamended. Those in favour? Those opposed? Thank you, Janine, and that carries then. And thank you, Philip, for that one. And 60 Rideau Street.
Hello again, everyone. How long it's been. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is an alteration proposal for 60 Rideau Street, which is municipally known as part of the Kingstown School. Next slide, please. So 60 Rideau Street is located on the western side of Rideau Street between Bay and Ordnance Street, is approximately 80 meters northeast of Artillery Park. And this property has multiple civic addresses, but only the portions of the property addressed as 64 and 66 Rideau Street have heritage value. So an important distinction here is that the Ontario Heritage Act designates the entire property, not specific buildings or addresses on a property. So any property alterations that could impact the heritage value of the entire property needs to be assessed, since the proposed alterations could have a negative impact on the heritage portions of the property by maybe drawing unnecessary attention, etc. An assessment of these potential impacts is necessary prior to determining approval. Next slide, please. So the alterations to this property are limited to the modern facades shown in these pictures. So that's the south-facing facade to the left, and that's the eastern-facing facade to the right. Next slide, please. The designated property has the following entry related to its architectural significance. Built as a school in 1868, the plans by John Power with an 1877 addition, and in spite of modern stone windows, the broad gable front of this limestone building with an arched doorway topped by 3 round arched windows and bracketed eaves is a significant part of this early streetscape. Importantly, the 2 pictures you saw before have none of these features because those are not the parts that are identified in the designation bylaw. Next slide, please. The application proposes 5 new openings along the eastern facade of the modern addition, 4 of which will be for windows and 1 will be for a door. Along the southern facade of the application, 3 openings will be proposed, all of which are for windows. The new windows and door proposed for the eastern street-facing facade are not anticipated to have any negative impacts during or after installation. Due to their distance from 64 and 66 Rideau Street, the new windows proposed on the southern facade will not be visible from Rideau Street and are also not anticipated to have negative impacts. Despite the seemingly obvious conclusion of no negative heritage impacts, it's important to review these alterations as the entire property is designated and significant changes could impact overall heritage value. Overall, the historic portions of the building on the property, namely 64 and 66 Rideau Street, are located closest to the street and still claim visual prominence over the simpler addition buildings on either side, namely 60 and 68 Rideau. As a result, the proposed alterations to 60 Rideau will have a neutral impact on the heritage value of the property, while also supporting an additional educational space, which has been a historic use for the property. Next slide, please. I just wanted to draw committee's attention to one of these conditions here, which is that staff will be consulted on the new door and window trim and detailing prior to installation to confirm the visual prominence of the 2 main heritage buildings on the property. Thank you very much, everyone. If anyone has any questions, more than happy to help assist.
Thank you, Phil. No, I would just add this awkwardness that we get in for new committee members, that it's a whole property which is designated, and therefore sometimes you are dealing with parts of a property which themselves do not have heritage considerations. You'll especially find this difficulty when we go out into a rural area and a whole property is designated simply to protect the farmhouse. And when the poor farmer comes and he wants to change the door on the barn, he has to go through a whole pile of things because it's the property. So in this case, as Philip was clearly stated, this is not an historic part of the building, but it is part of a designated property. So questions, comments, please. Jane, is that putting your hand up or just... Oh, you're a quiet group today. Goodness gracious. Okay, and we have nobody from the public here. So, oh, Janine, yes.
Sorry, no,
yeah.
I didn't. Sorry, I didn't mean to say anything.
Okay, that's fine. I think you do wonders working on a phone. I wouldn't even begin to do that, so not a problem. So looking then at my committee members, no questions. So we'll go on then looking for a mover and a seconder for the motion as printed. Moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Paul Banfield, thank you very much. Any further discussion from committee members? And seeing no movements, if you could raise your hand or say yes, please, for those in favour. And those opposed, and that also is carried. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr.
Phil,
Chair.
for that one. You're welcome. Don't go too far because you're looking at 412 Wellington Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you'd be
remind you,
shocked,
we're
this is
yeah,
actually
we're in
me.
Aidan, thank you. We're into part 5 now, just to remind committee members. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, Aidan, and good luck.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the earlier introduction. Too kind to do my job for me. Yeah, so this is the current application as for 412 Wellington Street, and it is for alterations to the rear elevation of the main heritage structure, as well as renovations to the later rear additions. Next slide, please. So 412 Wellington is part of the Berryfield Heritage Conservation District, and it is located on the southern side of Wellington Street, near the intersection of Wellington and George Streets. It has a prominent location within the district, being one of the first properties seen as you enter from Highway 15. Next slide, please. 412 Wellington is a 1.5-story vernacular building that was constructed in 1860 on the northeastern intersection of James and George Streets originally, before being moved to 412 Wellington Street in the late 1930s, with the rear summer kitchen addition being built shortly afterwards, and an ancillary tool room, as well as a mudroom rear additions were built in the 1960s. Next slide, please. The property was designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Village of Berryfield Heritage Conservation District. The property is designated as heritage within the district due to the features listed below relevant to this proposal. Notedly, that is a 1.5-story structure with narrow horizontal wooden shiplap siding, and the property's orientation to Wellington Street. Next slide, please. So before I get into the alterations, I would just like to direct your attention, if you are on the call, the video call with us today, the left half of the slide here, just the arrows directing, kind of pointing to the ancillary tool room, summer kitchen, and the ancillary mudroom structures. I will be tossing out these terms a lot in the next couple minutes, so just please be aware of which structures I am referring to. So alterations in the current application consist of works done to both the main structure and the rear additions. Please note that all the alterations to the main structure are on the rear elevation of the building and are well out of public view. The alterations to the main structure include the removal of a 2nd-story window above the gable of the summer kitchen. Staff consider this window to be minor in nature. Nextly, the addition of 2 skylights that will match the existing one that is currently on the southern gable of the main structure's roof. The 2 additional skylights will create symmetry on that rear gable. And lastly, for the main structure, the applicant also wishes to repair when possible or replace when necessary the horizontal wooden siding on the rear of the main structure with like-for-like material, as sections of it are currently rotting or deteriorating. Now, moving on to the alterations to the rear additions, they include that the foundation of the ancillary tool room will be raised to match the foundation of the summer kitchen. Additionally, a foundation will be added to the ancillary mudroom to match the structural height of the summer kitchen. Both foundations will be made with poured concrete or concrete block. The additions will be clad in tan stucco rather than blue shiplap siding. Stucco is noted to be a permissible cladding material within the Berryfield district. This will also create a more visible distinction between the primary heritage structure and the later rear additions, as currently they are all in these in the wooden shiplap siding. The configuration of cladding materials will be similar in nature to the neighboring property to the southeast of 7 George Street, so it is certainly not unheard of for the alterations. Next, skylights will be added to the gables of the summer kitchen and the ancillary two-room structures. On the southern elevation of the summer kitchen, 1 window will be replaced with a door, and that door will lead to the construction of a small southern-facing deck. Next slide, please. Lastly, there are a couple of proposed alterations to the western and eastern facades that will still remain mostly out of public view from the streetscape. And those are that there will be an addition of a door on the eastern facade of the mudroom and there will be a construction of an associated wooden landing and stairs, which will be relatively small in nature. Secondly, the replacement of the western-facing windows on the summer kitchen and the tool room will be replaced with final sash windows that will be 60 by 60 centimeters in size. Now, these alterations to the rear additions conform with the HDD policies by creating a visually distinctive piece with a separate form from the original heritage structure while still complementing one another. The additions remain limited in size compared to the original structure. They keep the same footprint with the slight exception of the construction of that wooden deck and remain very limited to public view from the streetscape. Next slide, please. Now, moving on to 3 parts of recommendations, we are recommending that the following alterations to the rear elevation of the heritage structure and the renovations to the later rear additions listed below be approved. Now, these are all just discussed individually, so I will not go into each alteration. So next slide, please. This is just a continuation of the proposed alterations that have already been discussed. So next slide, please. Lastly, the aforementioned alterations have been recommended subject to the following conditions listed below. That is all. I'm happy to take any comments or questions, and thank you for your time.
Good, thank you very much. Members of the committee, questions, comments? And seeing none there, Madam Clerk, or any of the public?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Duckus is in the meeting and he is the applicant for this file, and just in case he had any words he might wish to add.
Okay. So you, sir, have the right to make comments at this point if you wish.
I have nothing to add. I think Aidan did an excellent job at making the presentation. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much, sir. And I presume that the dash comments were all correctly recorded. I forgot to ask you that one, I'm sorry. Looking for further questions, not seeing any. Final comments? So it's a motion that cannot be altered at all. Looking for a mover and a seconder as printed. A recommendation with 8 clauses and 5 conditions to it. Mover, please. Moved by Don Taylor and seconded by Paul Banfield. Thank you very much. Any last moment thoughts on this? And if not, then I will call the question. Those in favor, if you can raise your hand, or thank you, Janine. Those opposed? And that then is carried. Thank you, Aidan, for that. We're really not as awful as we look, are we? And 16 Drummond Street. Are you doing this one, or is Phil?
Hello again, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Yep.
My apologies. Let me just fix my screens. Awesome. All right. Through you, Mr. Chair, the proposal at 16 Drummond Street is to achieve an approval for new solar panels on the roof of the 2nd story of the main house and 1-story addition along with the carport. Next slide, please. 16 Drummond Street is located mid-block between Wellington and Regent Streets and is approximately 50 meters north of Frontenac County Schools Museum in the heart of the village of Berryfield. Next slide, please. So the above image is 16 Drummond Street along is the western-facing facade, and it shows a 2-story frame vernacular heritage categorized home, which is built close to the street. And the top picture, my apologies, is facing east, and the bottom picture is facing north. Next slide, please. The designated property has the following most relevant attributes related to this application, which are highlighted on this slide. It is an understated vernacular building representative of early 20th century construction in Berryfield Village. It has a rectangular front and side gable plan. It has a close setback to the street and is oriented towards Drummond Street. Next slide, please. So after significant internal and external discussion, the applicant has proposed 2 solar panel configurations, and both include 11 solar panels on the southern pitch of the main 2-story roof. You can see this in red circled on the slide above, and you can see the panels away from view circled in purple. I'll reference both of these colors in just a moment. The HCD plan has specific policies regarding the location of solar panels that apply throughout the district, namely that solar panels shall be located in areas not in view of the street and shall not result in damage to the heritage fabric or value. Further, if installed on building roofs, solar panels should be, quote, in the same plane, end quote, as the roof. As such, only those panels on the rear of the one-story addition and carport are being recommended by staff as they are away from view. Please see the right-hand picture on the slide in purple for further clarity. In essence, the plan is clear that only those solar panels out of view are eligible for staff support, while also acknowledging the prevailing sentiment during the plan's completion in 2016 that solar panels do create a visual disruption. However, the applicant is clear that the southern pitch of the second story, which is shown in red, provides the majority of the capturable energy, and not placing panels on this pitch would impact the project's financial viability. Further, the applicant seeks to minimize other heritage impacts by using an electrical conduit to reduce the visual impact of wiring, using a black-on-black color for the solar panels to avoid color clashing, and plans to mount the panels flush with the roof to minimize visual intrusion. Excuse me. The applicant has also submitted a neighborhood survey, which notes that approximately 34 property owners have no concerns with solar panels in their area in principle, and show a slight preference towards configuration 2. This is the survey that was mentioned earlier by by Elizabeth that was submitted closer to the actual meeting and is available as an addendum. Next slide, please. In these slides, we can see the roof areas where staff can support solar panel installation. Of note, the tree behind the carport, which is the picture on the right, will need to be trimmed back and maintained on a continual basis to allow for adequate lighting to be absorbed on the roof of the carport. When considering alternative energy solutions to support this project, it became clear that there are trade-offs to avoid when adding solar panels on the there are trade-offs to avoid adding solar panels on the southern pitch of the second story roof that are not feasible for the applicant. In short, their proposed solar panels and panel configuration would cost 5 times less than the more visually subtle shoulder shingles, which is an option but is very expensive. A backyard array would significantly impact their backyard enjoyment and require wiring to be troughed 2 utility meters on the main house. And placing panels on the backyard shed would require reshingling to accommodate the panels and would also require wire troughing. And the existing rear yard addition skylights limit installation space. All of these parts, all of these areas that would cause further stress to the applicant are included in the exhibits in the report, showing each part that was mentioned here for a better visual representation. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we can see the vistas down Drummond Street, which emphasize the Berryfield Rock Garden Park and the currently underdeveloped area associated with 411 Wellington Street. This built-in natural environment allows this narrow street to feel like it has a continual street wall, which draws further attention to the sky and undeveloped vistas, while having the buildings fade into the background. This view emphasizes the existing roofs that are relatively modest in appearance and/or are obscured by trees, and this reduces the visual tension when transitioning from the built to the natural. When considering the visual impact of these solar panels, it is clear that there will be a negative impact to the built in natural transition, as new black solar panels on a brown roof would draw attention, even if the roof is mostly obscured by the neighborhood buildings and has a modest pitch. When looking north towards the property, less than half of the proposed solar panels would be visible, even when zoomed in. So if you look at that picture to the left, you can show that a 5x zoom still shows the roof in question, although it is far less visible when normally seen, I guess, at a 1x view. The full extent of the visual intrusion of the solar panels on the southern pitch of the second story roof is only fully visible when looking north at approximately 20 meters away from the property. Despite the roof of 16 Drummond Street not being a key heritage attribute and the solar panels only being visible when 20 meters away, only being fully visible, when 20 meters away, there are heritage impacts. As heritage professionals, staff are tasked with evaluating the impact of a project on heritage attributes of the building, district, cultural landscapes, as well as evaluating policy conformity. Despite the potential limited impacts on the subject property and the surrounding views from/near the property, the policy language clearly states that solar panels are not permitted when viewable from the street. As such, staff can only support the 16 solar panels invisible to the street, which are located on the eastern pitches of the side 1-yard story addition and the carport. Next slide, please. I wanted to further clarify that this recommendation is only for the approval of the solar panels proposed in locations that are permitted in the Berryfield Heritage Conservation District Plan. And with that, everyone, thank you very much. And if you have questions, be more than willing to help address them for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. Firstly, if you can confirm what was in dash. If anybody has any objections, otherwise I'll assume that that was correctly done. Thank you. Members of the public, do we have any members of the public, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. and Mrs. Elna Richardson are available to be able to speak to the application.
Okay, do you have comments at this? This is your time to speak.
Thank you. We'd like to thank you for your time and your consideration, and we certainly understand the constraints of your mandate. This is the third historical property we've lived in, and we have donated or spent considerable personal resources into making the structural integrity stand the test of time and to improve the historical appearance of the property. However, we also feel that the time has come to address the environmental emergency that we are all facing. Like many people, we have children and grandchildren, and we are looking to the future world that they will live in. We've traveled extensively and seen many locations where historical mandates have been adjusted to deal with today's needs. Unfortunately, the recommendation does not address our energy needs to a sufficient extent that it's a viable project. So thank you again for your consideration. If you have any technical questions, my husband is here to answer them.
Good, thank you very much. Other members of the public? And hearing none, committee members, comments, questions, including questions to the Richardsons. Councillor Doherty.
Well, I can't say it as well as Mrs. Richardson. She said it extremely well, that we need to take climate change serious it's so critical. Like, we're having one climate disaster after another. If we would, it's a shame, and I get frustrated when environmental issues and climate change gets pitted against business and profit, or in this case with heritage. So it's disappointing that we have to make this decision. I think it's important to support the solar panels. I live in Portsmouth Village. I have solar panels. We have solar panels on the roof. They're flush to the roof. They're not nice. Or I think if we force the solar panels to the back, then the tree's probably going to get trimmed all the time, if not cut down. I think we have to do the responsible thing, and in this case, actually bend the rules, and we need to do the right thing for the environment. It's the kind of decision that we would regret later. Like, I can't stress it anymore. I think Mrs. Richardson said it really well when she talked about her grandkids, and I think that's something we need to really listen to. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Other members wishing to speak on this one? Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation as well, and I appreciate Councillor Doherty's comments. I too support solar, and I'm a little bit familiar with it. So I think I understand everything. I guess I want the little clarity you went through the presentation. I think I was want to make sure we all understand that it's just it's only eight. Is it eight panels that are kind of not disputed or that we would like to see facing the other side that the applicant.
Mr. Chair, it would be
how
11.
many panels are in discussion here?
So the 11 are the current ones on the south pitch that we are not recommending for approval, and we are recommending the 16 not in view for approval. Thank you.
Right. I certainly understand the struggle here, but I also understand the sensitivity to the area, and so I'm a little bit torn on this one. I do know professionally that I can speak to shingles and solar, and so I actually I'm just going to say that I don't think it's that big a cost discrepancy. Okay, solar shingles are a growing option, and I'm familiar. So I'm speaking from experience that I know that the 5 times is probably not accurate. I'm saying just out loud and respectfully. I think that it's probably. I don't even think it's twice as much, actually. So I think that that's an option in considering the sensitivity, and that's what I would suggest. If this was my project, that's what I would do. I would do. But I think it's something that we can also address, similar to at the council level. I'm probably prepared to pass it here and then make work with Councillor Doherty on motions at the council level. I think that that's appropriate there. That's what I'm thinking, and I would like to hear the others there. I think this is I applaud the applicant. I think we all understand the urgency of our times. But one of the things you guys taught me is that since I've been on this committee, is that what if everyone did it in the subdivision? And that's an issue for me. And so if everyone did it, then I'm not sure I'm happy with it. Then I would say, let's look at, bring it to council at options for other, and maybe there's a way that Heritage can support a type of shingle, solar shingle. I'm saying professionally, and now part of this, that I think it's I would take a longer look at that option. And I think the return on the investment isn't as bad as might be considered here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Could I respond? Could I respond to Councillor Oosterhoff?
If it's directly to his comments, yes.
It is directly to his comment. On page 6 of the proposal that was put to us by SolarX, you will see there the costs of the solar panels. The panels that are would go onto our roof are $70 per kilowatt. The cost of solar shingles are $350 per kilowatt. That is 5 times more. So it would raise the total cost of this project to us from anywhere between $25,000 and $32,000 to over $350,000.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oosterhoff answering that.
No, I appreciate that. I'm sorry, I didn't see that, but that's obviously significant. But I would probably, get 2 or 3 prices on that. I don't know. I don't really know. I'm staring at that, wondering if that can possibly be true. It's not in my realm of. I don't. It doesn't seem right to me, but I'm just saying that respectfully. I'm just. I need to know more. So. If that's true, that's a news to me.
Okay, thank you. Other committee members? And seeing none, I'd like to, oh, sorry, Jean.
Thank you. I appreciated both councillors' comments, and I would like to say that I really think that this is an issue that council needs to deal with. And I was trying to find out a little bit more about other heritage experts in the world. And I noticed that the City of London, Ontario has developed guidelines for the installation of technology on heritage designated properties, and that was in 2018. And I really think that that's something that the city needs to look at. So I would really applaud the two councillors if they're going to take this forward. I'm a little bit confused about what our role is here, and maybe I'm not the only one, but I don't think that this application as put forward can be altered. And I don't really know what we're voting on. So I would like staff to kind of clarify that. I do know that it's panels on the back, I guess, but I just would like more clarification on what Heritage Kingston's role is here, because it seems like it's a bigger issue than we're able to deal with right now. Thank you.
The motion, which is on the page 7 of the agenda, states 8 solar panels on the eastern pitch of the side yard 1-story addition and 8 solar panels on the eastern pitch of the carport. And that is different from the original request.
Right. And I guess I'm just wondering what the implications of voting yes or no to this are to the applicant and to the committee.
So the applicant,
I can help address that if you'd like.
Okay, Philip.
So in this case, it's still a part 5, so we'd be discussing a recommendation going to council for approval, and it cannot be amended at this time. That is correct. But in this case, my understanding is that our role would be to gauge how this fits into the Heritage Conservation District plan and its policies. And this is why staff put forward just the ones that comply with the Heritage District plan, because we're trying to be consistent with those policies. Your point is well taken about this being a council level discussion, because it's noted in the report that there is not necessarily a conflict, but there seems to be tension between our current plan as approved in 2016 and the emergency for the climate change in 2019. However, that medium in discussion of sustainable energy and its merits and value and what trumps what is likely best addressed at a council setting when multiple priorities can be discussed in such detail. At this stage, my understanding is that committee members would be addressing just the heritage implications and their thoughts and weighing what they would be believing is appropriate for the Heritage District based on this proposal. And the comments that would be received would definitely be reviewed by council while they determine if they want to proceed with the proposal as it's currently written, or if they would like to amend it accordingly to weigh other priorities that are beyond the ones that we are considering here today, namely heritage. So with that, I'll leave it there, but more than willing to answer any follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Other committee members before I join in this? Don Taylor?
I certainly understand and sympathize with the applicants. I also understand staff's position, and I think that's fair. They are supposed to be guided certainly by the district guidelines. To me, there's a problem in that there are questions about technology, there are questions about costs, there are questions about the appearance of some solar panels as opposed to solar shingles. And so it could be that there are sort of ways of satisfying sort of both parties in the future, if not now. So I don't know exactly, well, I don't think this committee can do any more than make these kinds of comments. And council has to deal with this. I really think that it'd be good to have, as we sometimes do, get an independent expert to review the sort of this issue, appearance and cost and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other committee members? Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a naive, well, I know, I'm sure it's a naive question because I don't know enough about solar panels, but it seems if you, right now, some of it seems to be hinging on the fact that the panels in dispute, if I can use that word, that stick out through the sight line, could we remove those? And if so, would that, I mean, could it then be, instead of what we talked about 16, could it be 14 or 12? And how would that impact your energy needs, I guess, is where I'm going with this. Or is that just not possible to do?
Either Philip or Mr. Richardson. Philip?
So I'll begin, and I'll definitely let Mr. and Mrs. Lichtert, and I apologize for that, address further as needed. My understanding is that there is different cost considerations as well. And just to clarify, and then I'll pass it on to the applicant, is that so 25 or 27 are proposed, configuration 1 and 2. Staff are putting forward the 16 that are not in view on the carport and garage. And the 11 on the roof that would be visible from the road are the ones in dispute. So I just want to clarify that, Mr. Banfield. And with that, I'll pass it on.
All right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Lichtson? You need to unmute yourself.
All right, thank you very much. If I may make it clear, the panels on the south-facing roof of the two-story structure provide, because of their location, because they're facing east, south, and west, would provide 50 to 70% of all of our current electricity usage. The panels on the back of the carport and the non-street facing part of the addition would produce in total roughly 20 to 30%. So any proposal that goes forward that doesn't include the panels on the south-facing roof of the two-story structure just is not a feasible proposition. It just does not return enough energy to make it worthwhile. And this again is because of the orientation of the panels and the way the sunlight strikes it, as I understand it. I understand that this is a question that has to go to City Council, and I would respectfully suggest that the committee should make it clear to City Council that the recommendation going forward is one way that City Council can go, and the proposals that we have put forward are the other way that City Council can go, because as it stands now, the recommendation to City Council is only for part of the total energy production that's possible on this property. Thank you. I hope that answers the questions.
Yep, no, thank you very much. Other questions or comments? And seeing none, Don, could you take the chair while I make a comment, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you. No, I've been very interested in, firstly, staff's motion, recommendation, and the discussion. This is a very, very difficult topic. We've dealt with it before at this committee. We have approved some energy-saving measures. However, I think at some point you have to, as a number of you have said, go back to council, because I do not believe that we can approve things which go against the conservation plan. I would like to have seen the Barrowfield Citizens group involved here, and I would like to have seen your local councillor involved as well before it came here, and Councillor Doherty and Councillor Oosterhoff had to make their decisions. Also in the future, and what mostly concerns me, if we make decisions, the wrong decision now is the upcoming subdivision over the road on the Horton school site. Because if we start bending what is written for the Heritage Conservation District here, there is going to be immense pressure to make changes, bends, whatever you want, when that subdivision appears. I was also fascinated by one of the pictures, and this was mentioned by one of the our members' comments, the horrible mass of hydro and phone lines which are already on the street. And I know Paul Banfield will be laughing at this because he lives on a street where everything was buried. And boy, what a difference it makes. It's too bad that we can't just bury everything in Barrowfield. The other concern I had is that people have been saying, well, when this goes to council, they will see the comments, they will do the comments. I'm not sure that those comments, our comments, will go to council. And I would strongly ask Councillor Oosterhoff and Councillor Hurley to follow up with their comments that they will do something. And quite what that something is, I'm not sure, whether it means relooking at the plan, whether it means relooking at the conservation energy approach by the city, but at least you see a problem here, and it's not the last time that it's going to appear. Finally, I'd commend staff for amending the request down to the 16 panels, which they feel are suitable. And I am sorry that that will not be what the would not be what the applicant wants if this is passed. It's a tough one, and I hope that this is not the last that we speak about things which have come about really after the conservation districts have been plans have been written. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Returning the chair.
Other last comments? Councillor Doherty.
Just have to get that mute button to work. I just want to say that I know I made my view clear at the beginning, but every time you turn the news on right now, you're seeing weather extremes, and the new normal are unpredictable extremes. And these weather extreme events, they actually destroy our houses. And there was a comment that we don't want to see solar panels on every house. I hope that we move into a future where every house has solar panels. That's the only way we can avoid the kind of disastrous future our children will have. I just want to stress that. So I definitely can support what's in front of us, but I am committed to bring something to council and make sure we follow up, because I agree with the committee's comments that this is a larger issue. It's above all of our pay grade on this committee. I'm committed to bring it to council.
Okay, thank you very much. Have you got an answer to that, Mr. Lickerson?
Yes, in response to your 2 points, in fact, Councillor Beam, we have been in touch with right from the very start of our putting this proposal forward. So our city, we have been in touch with our city councillor, and he's been very supportive and very helpful to us in suggesting how we should put this forward to the committee and to city council. So yes, first, Councillor Beam has been fully informed and advised. All of the documents that we have sent forward, Councillor Beam has been copied on. The second point that you make about dealing with the Barryfield committee or the Barryfield group, we have not spoken to that group particularly directly, because we have taken a totally different approach. We have been walking around the village with our dog, and we have been speaking to every villager that we pass by, showing them the pictures of the proposals that we have put forward. The results of that, and we've asked those people to indicate their views on our proposal specifically. So far, we've managed to speak to a total of 36 people. 34 people have all indicated they support the putting of solar panels, including those that are which are visible from the street. Only 2 have not wanted to either express an opinion or put their names to a document, and that is the document that we have put before the committee. With regard to the Barryfield group, it is a limited group. I don't believe that it represents all of the residents of Barryfield. And while it is useful, and while it's very helpful, and while it has made many contributions, in this particular case, we decided not to speak to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Last comments from committee members, Councillor Ustav.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for everyone's comments there. Just to be clear of my comments that Councillor Doherty responded to, I certainly am in support of all homes having solar panels, and I think been speaking to that for over almost 20 years. So, but this is a situation I think that does require some sensitivity, and I really applaud the applicant for the work being done. Excellent communication with the neighborhood. I do think that Councillor Doherty and I, and certainly Councillor Bohm, can work closely together for the best outcome here. And so I'm even though what is recommended, and you can correct me, Mr. Chair, because I do want the committee to, I understand that if I support this motion, that we will not abandon the Richardson's request for full output. I completely understand solar and the return on investment and percentages and sunlight and everything that they need for full impact of the solar opportunity here. So I don't want to pass something that is not going to be maximized. Okay, so that is my intention to try to at least put my 2 cents worth if I can, because not everybody understands that. So but I do believe that if we pass this tonight, Mr. Chair, we as council have the privilege and the responsibility to make it what we want at council, what we see best through. Can council make can council make an amendment to this, Mr. Chair?
I was either looking for Andrea or Jennifer, because I've got another question for them. This is getting into complications. Jennifer, let's answer Councillor Ustav's question first of all. Can council make amendments to a motion that we send them?
Thank you so much, and through you, and thank you, Councillor Oosterhoff, for that question. I think it is an important one. Even in Part 5, council does retain the ultimate decision-making authority and can amend the recommendations brought forward, supported by committee or otherwise. So council does retain that authority, and council retains the authority to direct an approval that is contrary or, in conflict, that's a heavy word, but with an HCD plan. Council can additionally direct staff to explore revisions to plans or alternate studies, appreciating what Jane was sharing earlier about the work that was done in London, which wouldn't be dissimilar to an approach we have already in place with a windows policy. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, while you're there then, knowing the length of time that would take, if council obviously shows that that's the direction they'd like to go in, is there a problem with the applicant putting in another application on this same property to go back to his original application very soon? Because I know we have deadlines that you can't revise a lost motion.
So thank you, and I will try my best. It is a little tangly, as we might say out east. The proposal, if approved by council, or the recommendation that staff have brought forward, would allow the property owners to move forward with those that actually conform with the HCD plan. If council then additionally directed staff to consider revisions or bring forward revisions to the HCD plan, potentially as well as a study or a policy on green energy initiatives within heritage spaces and how we could consider those, that would take time to bring that back for council's approval. I think, however, that would set potentially a bit of it would create a gap, if one will, in our understanding of council's direction on green energy initiatives in heritage spaces, which would then allow the property owners to bring back an additional permit request, which could then retable the consideration of these solar panels. And potentially consider, perhaps, as Councillor Oosterhoff has suggested, reevaluate the options of shingles and other green energy options on the property. So just to summarize, what staff are trying to do here is create a path for support for those aspects that are in compliance with the plan as currently stated, but also allow council the opportunity, as afforded under the Heritage Act and with their decision-making authority, to direct staff to explore options that could allow this application in future to be considered differently.
Good, thank you. Further comments? Are we ready for a vote? Mr. Luckerson, I see you have a hand up still.
The company that we have doing, I specifically asked the company that we have proposed, that has made the proposal to us, which by the way is SolarX, and they're rated as the best solar installation company in the province, as I understand it. I have asked them what, assuming that council were to be able to come to an approval of the total proposal, when they might be able to begin work and get it completed. The answer I got last night was sometime between 4 and 12 months, and that realistically, we could not look to have any work begin until next spring at the earliest. So if the proposal, if the recommendations from the committee go forward to council as they are, that would mean that we could only get part of that done. It would, and to try to come back and do the balance of their proposal at another time would virtually double the cost, because they have the people coming and then going and then coming and then going. If we had our druthers, we would prefer to see the committee put forward our specific proposal to council, A, for approval or disapproval, and B, put forward the committee's recommendations as an alternative. That would then give council the opportunity to go forward with the proposal that we have made to the committee. And so if council comes to a decision at its September the 6th meeting, we could then proceed with the company and arrange for installation of the whole project. Or else we, if the council decides that they do not approve of our whole project, then we can cancel the whole thing altogether.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ustav.
Mr. Chair, is that, I appreciate Mr. Richardson's comments. I think I understand it, but is what he's asking not possible?
It is not possible under our rules. That's right.
Okay, so what he's asking is still possible at the council level. So that's what I want to understand. I'm prepared to pass this because I want the opportunity to work with council and my colleagues and the councillor to have something like this ready, but we will have to spend a little bit of time on that. So to me, the timeline that you have is well, that's in our favor, actually. That gives us a little bit of time, and that's what we need.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you, and through you, I just did want to confirm for the committee's benefit that that is correct. The committee cannot alter the recommendation. However, council retains the authority to do so should they so desire. So they could draft an alternate recommendation to put on the floor before council for discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Luckerson, you still have a hand up. Oh, no, you don't have a hand up. Okay, committee members, Councillor Doherty.
Just want to clarify that it's going to come to council. So we're going to have the discussion in council. If we don't support what's in front of us, we make it clear to council that we support the Richardsons.
That's a very interesting comment, you know, and normally I would say yes, but in light of the discussion that you have heard today, I suspect that if this is approved, it's approved as being as far as we can go under the present Heritage District Plan, but I think you've heard most people say they'd like to go further. You might want to listen to the recording of this to see whether my interpretation is right, but I haven't heard too much negativity against the concept of solar panels.
Can we just have Ms. Campbell perhaps respond to my gut instinct is that to actually vote this down to make sure that we do have a wholesome discussion, even though I am going to bring it to council, but council meetings go fast and quick, and I suspect the next council meeting will have a lot on the agenda. I want to make sure that we're doing this right.
you want to comment on that, Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, this is a very unusual circumstance. I just want to confirm what committee is feeling. That is true. This is not a usual situation. If I may, Councillor Doherty, it's hard for me to advise all committee members on how to vote in this circumstance. In a normal situation, to vote against as a non-support of a Part 5 recommendation would normally flag to council that committee had some concern regarding the staff's recommendation in that Part 5. I think what's complicated here is that to vote this down would flag to council that there's something amiss or of concern in staff's recommendation of the HCD guidelines. So my concern is that if the committee votes it down, what you're drawing council's attention to may actually confuse the matter, insofar as that the issue is not with the HCD application. The issue is actually with the HCD being in conflict, if one will, with the provisions or our direction under a climate emergency and green energy initiatives. My suggestion, given what I'm hearing from yourself, Councillor Doherty, as well as Councillor Oosterhoff, would be that the committee vote to its mandate, which is to support the HCD plan, and that councillors confirm and commit, as I've heard you do here, to raising and separating this matter at council, and that the applicants could be present. It's possible that the chair could issue some correspondence to council to further support the considerations raised by committee today. That's what I think would most align with the mandate of this committee and the way your votes translate to messaging to council. And in this case, I think supporting the recommendation is to the mandate of committee. Having councillors champion this discussion further at council also aligns with the comments that were received from committee members about this matter needing to be considered at council. That's my recommendation. Again, this is a very unusual circumstance.
Yeah, just what I was going to say. Thank you very much. No, it's an awkward one, and I think we should work with councillors to see how it goes.
Okay, so sorry,
yep.
Chair Lauer, I just want to then ask and suggest that Councillor Oosterhoff and I write a motion for the next meeting, because I'd like to hear maybe for staff to report back to council, and then we'll make sure that this is will definitely be discussed, because the London example that Ms. Perlin brought up is an important one. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Other committee members, last chance, I think, by now. Okay, so you have a motion with 3 conditions: the installation of 8 panels on the side yard, 8 panels on the carport. Do I have a mover for that motion? Paul Banfield, and a seconder. Looking for a seconder, Don Taylor. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? There's no amending or anything allowed. Seeing none, then I will ask those voting in favor of the motion as printed. Oh, the screen just changed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And those voting against. And that carries then. So thank you very much. And thank you, applicants, for being here and hearing the dilemma to some extent that we were put in, and hearing the promises that the councillors have made about what they will do when this goes to council in September, the first council meeting in September, I would guess. Thank you indeed. Okay, Philip, thank you for that mammoth afternoon, morning, almost afternoon. Delegated authority, heritage approvals. We have a report here. Who's going to talk on it?
That would be myself.
Aidan? Oh, okay.
Back again. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So hello again, everyone. There is no presentation for this. This is just a brief information report. A biannual report on delegated authority approvals, to be precise. As committee is aware, council has delegated a number of minor alterations to the Director of Heritage Services for approval for properties that are designated either individually or as part of a district. As a reminder, delegated authority approvals are strictly approvals. We cannot recommend to deny applications through the same process. If for whatever reason we are unable to support an application, then it will be directed to Heritage Kingston for consultation and then to council accordingly. Delegated authority approvals are granted in relation to a list of alterations that is outlined in the Heritage Procedural Bylaw, which can be found in Exhibit A of the current report. Heritage permits are an effective tool to conserve the value of our heritage resources in our city, and it is a public service that staff try to provide to property owners and the general public as efficiently as possible. Alterations under delegated authority are seen as minor in nature, and permits are occasionally comprised of more than one minor alteration at a time, and where applicable, they are all done together through the delegated authority process. This is in line with the intent of the procedural bylaw and allows staff to move these minor alterations in one group. On average, a permit that moves through the delegated authority approval process takes roughly 3 weeks to get approved, while applications that go through committee and subsequently council can take roughly 2 months for approval. So it is certainly a bit of a time saver for all parties involved. In accordance with the procedural bylaw, staff are to report out the permits done by means of delegated authority on a biannual basis. So between August 23rd, 2021 and June 27th, 2022, the city granted approval to 83 total applications for alteration, new construction, or demolition to designated heritage properties under the Ontario Heritage Act. Of those 83, 41 of those were granted approval through delegated authority process. A full table of the DA permits can be found under Exhibit B of the current report. Approvals through delegated authority in the past reporting period included alterations to windows, masonry, existing signage, repair to roofs and or eaves, wooden detailing repair, or situations occasionally requiring emergency approval. All of the alterations gladly assisted in conserving the value of the city's heritage resources and were completed using best practices such as the policy on masonry restoration or window renovations. So yeah, it's pretty brief. Thank you for your attentiveness on this. And again, I'm happy to take any questions or comments on the DA reporting.
Thank you. Any questions to Aidan on the delegated authority heritage approval process for the past year? Don Taylor.
Thanks very much. I obviously, we couldn't look through all these delegated authority applications in detail, but one of them just came to my notice, and I just would like a bit more information if possible, and it may not be very possible. And that is 11 Sydenham, where, as I understand it, and this is from a brief look on Dash, a number of windows on the facade, presumably original, were approved for replacement. And I just want to ensure that the windows policy, which says they should not be replaced unless they are in poor condition, was followed. Because original windows are a very important part of our heritage facades. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can give a really quick update on that one because I worked closely with Alex on that one. We attended on site together. So actually, your presumption that the windows were original is incorrect. The front window on the first floor is original, and so we've been working with them to repair it. However, the second story windows were from the 70s. So what we approved through that delegated authority permit was a period appropriate replacement for what was not a super appropriate material. I believe they were made of vinyl.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Okay, Don, good.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Other questions on there? Otherwise, we go on to the working group reports. I don't believe there are any. Emergency approvals, 610 Montreal Street, repair of period windows. Philip, you're going to comment on that? Yep.
I can briefly address that. So this is that pretty prominent corner property, that limestone building between at that Montreal intersection. Essentially, there was a crack in the window, and it looks like the Muntin bar was also separating from the frame. And so what we've approved is effectively a restoration of that window, period appropriate window, like for like, no replacement, just repair. And we just wanted to get that done sooner rather than later because that property has a bunch of ongoing financial things that we're working with in terms of the city, and we want to make sure it was safe and usable for the long term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure everyone will go and look at it and see that you've done it properly now. Further comments? Okay, motions. There are none. Notices of motion. I see none. Other business. Don, you wanted to ask about what happened at 73 Albington at council.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think committee members will remember a kind of difficult decision we had a month ago about the alterations to a coach house on Ovington Street. And the basically staff were recommending the proposed alteration, but the committee voted unanimously against it. That came to council last week, and council approved the alteration application by a vote of 7-6. And this is somewhat extraordinary. I don't remember, in my experience, a unanimous recommendation from the Heritage Committee being overturned by council. So I think we all need to sort of look at it, try to understand why, and think about procedures, because this is clearly not a good situation for the way things should work. And so I'd just like to review what happened, or as I saw what happened. And if you didn't watch the discussion on council, it's probably still available on YouTube. But basically, the question is, well, first of all, we should understand that council has the authority to make the decision, whatever we recommend. There's no question about that. Nevertheless, they decided to approve it. And so the question is, why? Well, in the discussion, there might have been several reasons. There was discussion about infill being good, densification being good, but that wasn't really relevant. The committee, our committee, was not opposed to infill or densification. I think the essential situation was that heritage staff were approving the alteration, and so the council were put in the position of making a choice between the staff recommendation and the committee recommendation. Well, that's fair enough. It's kind of unfortunate that that arises, but the implication was, and I think, again, this there may be an impression by some councillors that they can trust heritage staff, and not so sure about committee staff. We might have different viewpoints that are maybe not reasonable. However, the important point is, which was not brought up at the meeting, was that if you look at the staff review of this application, they were some very strong concerns. They, I can't remember them in detail now, but there was a strong statement from staff saying the garage should not be forward of the main facade. They referred to the city's guidelines for residential lots, not just heritage, but all new residents, that garages should not project in front of the facade. So nevertheless, well, so if you look at those comments and look at the comments from committee members, they're really the same. So we're all on the same page. So it's not a question of expertise and judgment. Everybody was on the same page there. Nevertheless, staff recommended approval. And, we've been over this before, but there are some reasons for that. I think staff don't like to turn down applicants. Applicants can complain to councillors, they can complain to senior staff and so on. And likewise, I think councillors want applicants to be, sorry, is the clerk stopping me? Sorry.
Sorry, Elizabeth, you've got a comment?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Taylor. I want to note the limitations of other business. It is not to have discussions or advance further matters that have been already dealt with in a previous meeting or have been dealt with at council. There is a record of the council meeting that did occur, which also is available on YouTube if anyone wishes to review what did happen and what was said. I do note that Councillor Oosterhoff has his hand up, and perhaps if the councillors wish to respond to provide their understanding, that is would be up to the chair to determine whether or not that is suited. But I did want to note that there is a limitation in other business for what can be discussed and at what brevity it can be discussed.
And I have never seen that guideline, so I'm lost on when I should stop. So, but anyway, Don, can you quickly summarize and conclude, and then we'll hear from Councillor Oosterhoff?
Yes, I will, and I want to assure everybody that I'm not trying to revisit the decision. The decision has been made. What I'm concerned about are we comfortable with the procedures? Because at the moment we have a review of procedures, and I'm concerned that if we don't improve our procedures, we're going to have a situation that like this, which is clearly undesirable for everybody. So let me try to conclude rather quickly. The mayor and also the city lawyer confirmed that councillors make the decision. But what they didn't say was that councillors have to consult the Heritage Committee. At the meeting, there was input from the applicant, there was input from staff. I'm not aware that there was any input from the Heritage Committee. Where was the Heritage Committee consulted? And when I looked at the council agenda for that meeting and looked for the information package for 73 Alwington, it wasn't there. So the councillors, it's possible that councillors had their own council agenda, which did have the information package for 73 Alwington. But if they didn't, then they have no input from this committee. And Councillor Oosterhoff, who missed the meeting, said he wanted to know what the committee thought about this application, and Heritage staff responded. I thought he should have looked at the agenda package to see what we said, what was said on Dash, and so on and so forth. So I'm really concerned that council are not carefully consulting the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it's a bit of an inappropriate use of the time, as the clerk has made notice there. And I think that we can bring it up in another forum, but certainly not under this heading. I actually understand why Mr. Taylor would make these comments, but I think that a comment like that, that's not the way things should work, is probably inappropriate, because actually it is the way things should work. The lens from which council views this is it is the authority. It is the lens that ultimately we are responsible for. And we had the information, we had the input of the other counselor on site, and everything worked as it should be. This was no respect to this committee and the great work that it does. And I think that we just had to make a decision at that time, and that there are going to be times where these things happen. And so we had the package, we had the information, we heard from the applicant, we heard from the heritage planning, and I think that we had a good view of it. and a decision was made. I don't think that this is a healthy place to debate that. I didn't think it would happen. And I think that we can choose another option, but the right, in the end, council has the authority and the privilege and the responsibility to do exactly what it did. And thank goodness, because that's the role we carry. We did our job. And I think that this committee does a great job. But there are times where council, as it's the mothership, it makes the decision for what's best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would ask you, and I'll write to you about it, where the best time to discuss this, because the feeling was that the committee did its best job. And in a teaching situation, we need to know where we went wrong, so we can come back to that at another time. Anything to add, Jennifer, or rather than prolonging?
No, not wanting to prolong at all, and thank you, and through you. I would just add that the Heritage Kingston Review Working Group has contemplated a number of alterations to the committee structure. The committee has seen these. We are preparing to finalize a report for council's consideration. I think if there is an opportunity for council to redirect staff on how they would like to engage with matters decided at committee, that would be the opportunity for council to direct to do so under the mandate they've already provided for the committee structure to be reviewed. And so I would just add that I think there is already a path forward for that discussion. And certainly when the councillors receive that report as members of council, they could raise concerns if present then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other business? Any other business that we've got? Correspondence, you have a letter to the committee from Robert McLeod. And I think probably this should go back to you, Jennifer, to whichever of your, I forget the names of them now. Oh, I should have them up here. Assets Working Group seems to be the better place for this. The Ontario Heritage Trust and the Community Heritage Ontario both send out newsletters, and I'd hope you'd look at those. And you also have the addendum of on 16th Drummond Street, which we talked about. The next meeting, September 21st, and Madam Clerk, are we still looking at this going to City Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, yes, there will be an option for all committee members, applicants, agents, members of the public, should they wish to attend in person, that they are able to do so in council chambers. This will be noted on the agenda when it is released for September.
And the only comment I would make and just get confirmed by you is that if you stay at home, then the PowerPoint presentations will only appear in the small Hollywood squares that we have. You will not get the presentation in the same way as we have been getting them. So that may be an incentive to come down to council chambers and see everything big and live. Anyway, we'll if there's a change in that, we'll get back to you, but be prepared to come to City Hall if you wish on September 21st. Otherwise, I look for a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting. Oh gosh, Councillor Doherty and Councillor Oosterhoff, what a speed. Those in favour, thank you all very, very much for all of that. And maybe really